How's it going? Welcome back, my beautiful sinners, to another great video here on the Savior Show. That's right, guys, the magical and the professional Savior Show. That's right. Of course, I am very professional. It's not like I'm completely insane, not quite yet, but we're pretty much getting there very close, so bear with me. Anyway, guys, welcome back to another great video. Let me know how you're doing in the comments down below, and check out the links that I leave in the comments, linking to anything that you want on Amazon and my music. Any support would be appreciated. Thank you very much. Today, guys, I want to be talking about one of the best cartoon shows of all times, okay? Now, I've seen a lot of great cartoons, okay, before they turned to absolute garbage, like Family Guy. But when I was growing up, when I was a little young malchick, okay, I would watch so much of The Simpsons. Like most people would in the Western culture, The Simpsons were the most dominant, they were the most prevalent, and, everyone knew what The Simpsons were about. Pretty much everyone around the world knew who The Simpsons were, even if they didn't watch them personally, because they became so popular, so mainstream with their relatable, wacky humor, mostly appealing to the US audience, because it was all about, the average kind of working class American family, which is what made it so relatable and so interesting and funny. But for me, someone who was, a little bit of a wacky woodle, who liked the outside, things, who liked the different and quirky, unique things. I grew up on, sci-fi and fantasy and stuff like that. I liked that kind of genre, and The Simpsons never quite clicked with me. I would watch it, I would really enjoy the horror episodes, they were the best for me, in my opinion. But then a new show came out with the same creator and the same people who wrote The Simpsons. Not all the same people, that's why, it was very different, but it also had the same charm and the same, really lovable characters that The Simpsons had, and this was the Futurama. And if you don't know what Futurama was, or you don't know what Futurama is, let me briefly explain. So, Futurama was made by the same person who made The Simpsons, but it was a very different type of show, because Futurama was about basically a weird kind of loser person who lived in the 21st century, who was basically just a pizza boy deliverer. And it started out with him, and his life pretty much wasn't going anywhere, and it was built around the 20th century, the rise of the 20th century, where people were very worried about where technology would go, and where media and pretty much everything would go. And that's what made Futurama so interesting. And they were right about so many things, because Futurama was about this character Fry, and he would get frozen and then wake up 1,000 years later in the future, and all this wacky stuff would happen. There were robots, there were aliens, and basically he became a delivery boy again, but in the future a delivery boy was a lot more exciting, and for him it was basically the best job imaginable, because he could go and explore foreign planets. Each episode was so entertaining, because unlike The Simpsons, it wasn't, although The Simpsons was far from realistic, and it was still, just a funny cartoon, it was still restricted in the fact that it had to be, usually on the planet Earth, it had to be set in America, it had to be set in their neighborhood. But the Futurama series didn't have this problem, okay? That's why every episode felt fresh and felt exciting, because, you had the whole universe to explore, and it could tackle with really interesting topics like parallel universes, time travel, all these things that when I was growing up, I was super excited about, super into, and super interested, because, science was not exactly the coolest thing, but Futurama made it really interesting and made you actually interested in science and technology and stuff like that. And, it was very meta. It took, piss out of itself and the, modern culture, which was the 20th century, and all that kind of stuff. And it would flip-flop between the two times quite often. But what made Futurama so much better than The Simpsons, in my opinion, was pretty much, it was, so massive with its spectrum, where you could just have all these different kind of episodes, all these different unique adventures, and often it would kind of link into another, unlike The Simpsons, where basically each episode ends and it basically resets, kind of like Family Guy. And this is why I don't like Family Guy, because basically none of the episodes matter, none of the character development really matters, they're always the same characters. Futurama was really great because it actually had character development. You would see all these characters go through these crazy adventures and these really interesting themes, but the characters would actually develop over time, and they would form relationships, things would change, they would actually grow old, they wouldn't just stay the same age like they would in The Simpsons. I mean, I know they do age over time a little bit, but Futurama had so much more depth to it, and the universe felt really alive with all the the brands and the slogans like Slurm and all that kind of stuff. And over time, Futurama built up a massive cult following, and it was nowhere near as successful as The Simpsons, of course, but it did have a massive following, and basically for all the sci-fi nerdy people, they would absolutely go crazy about it, just like I am, because it was really great. It was just so amazing. I remember, after coming home from school, I would binge watch so many episodes of Futurama because it was funny, but it also had really sad and dramatic moments. The Simpsons never really quite captured the range and the emotional range that Futurama had, and that's why I loved it so much. The characters, to me, were far more interesting. Bender was a robot, but he was basically a complete immoral robot and very selfish. The only really person he cared about was Fry, and you would actually see their dynamic, their friendship dynamic evolve over time when they first move into each other, and Bender would often get jealous of Fry if he had a girlfriend and stuff like that. These were, they felt like real people, these characters, and that's why, you form such an attachment to this series, because, like I said, over time, all these characters would change, they would go on these crazy adventures, they would deal with, sometimes really complicated topics, and, make it fun and interesting, of course, not boring, like, real world science can often be. And also, the great thing about Futurama was, it had emotional weight, and so many cartoons and basically, just TV shows in general lack this nowadays, and Futurama knew when to stop, and that's mostly because, like I said, it wasn't massive, so it couldn't rely on a massive budget, so they did have to put an end to it eventually. But, unlike stuff like Family Guy, which seems to go on forever, even South Park, which I love, it seems to drag and go on forever. Futurama had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It had movies, it was a complete saga and a complete franchise, and I just absolutely loved it so much. I can still watch episodes today, and I've seen them all like 1,000 times, but, the nostalgia it brings back, and, just growing up watching Futurama and growing up alongside these characters were so interesting and so fun. It was just really wacky. It didn't, stick to the, formulaic kind of themes that were basically being shown everywhere else on television, and especially you wouldn't see this in, any kind of cartoon. And although, yes, it was, I wouldn't exactly say it was a kid's cartoon, it was more of a teenager cartoon, I guess, because it sometimes dealt with very adult themes, and it wouldn't be afraid to, push itself and sometimes, push the limits of, this kind of genre. And that's why I love Futurama so much, and that's why I still think Futurama is probably one of the most underappreciated and underrated shows of all time. And, not many people know about Futurama, not many people watch Futurama, but it did have a massive cult following, and, it was just absolutely amazing. I think they did make a game, which I am showing on screen at the moment. I never played the game. I know The Simpsons made lots and lots of games, but I never played the Futurama game, but I might give it a try someday, because, it would be pretty great to go back and experience the Futurama universe, but actually play the game and actually be involved in it. I just never got the chance to play it when I was growing up on the PlayStation 2, but, like I said, it wasn't as huge as The Simpsons, but it still had a massive cult following, a really deep and interesting universe. It would, have its own lore, and it would have its own, set rules about the universe. It wasn't just, wacky, quirkiness the whole time. It did sometimes feel really grounded, and it just had, unlimited potential. That's what was so great about Futurama. One episode they could just be in their home city, dealing with kind of character development stuff. The next episode they could go on a crazy adventure to, another planet where they have to meet, like these weird water-based aliens, and the way to kill them was to drink them. Just stuff like this, it was really creative. And that's why I love Futurama so much. And that's why, if you haven't seen it, you should definitely give it a go. And, you can watch all of them. I think there's like 8 seasons or maybe more. But like I said, it doesn't go on forever. And they are all of high quality. And that's just why I think Futurama was one of the best shows in my childhood and in my teenage years growing up. And it was a big part of my culture, I guess. And I just wanted to talk about Futurama and how much I loved it and why I think it was so underrated, but why people loved it so much. And go check it out, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have yourselves a blessed day, and peace out.